Hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment of my ongoing weekly series Till the Fabled End. And today we're going to be looking at The Wolf Among Us. I'm briefly going to talk about the video game, but this isn't really a video game video. This is meant to be a comic book reading order. And so what I'm actually going to talk about is the comic based on the video game, based on the comic. But with no further ado, let's jump into it. So, The Wolf Among Us is an episodic kind of point and click, kind of graphic novel-esque mystery adventure game developed by Telltale Games and is based on the Fables comic. It's actually a prequel to all the comics we've looked at so far. So it's a prequel to Fables issue 1 or Fables hardcover 1. It came out in 2013 and 2014. The reason I say that is it released in episodes. So it's actually released as 5 distinct episodes that were kind of like staggered, I guess, in their release. I bought them all in one. You could buy a season pass and just buy all of them, and I think I did that in 2015. But the episodes themselves have got these names. Number 1 is called Faith. Number 2 is called Smoke and Mirrors. Episode 3 was A Crooked Mile. Episode 4 was In Sheep's Clothing, and episode 5 was Cry Wolf. And this game got released on Xbox 360. I remember it had a demo on Xbox 360, which is where I originally played it. I thought this is pretty good. It was also on PS3 and subsequently got released on PS4 and Xbox One. And for PS4 and Xbox One, physical editions were available, and the same with the PS Vita. And in fact, I have it on the PS Vita. I think I had to get it from America. I don't think they had it available in the UK, but thankfully the Vita is not region locked, so I just got it for my Vita, and I think I've got it on my Xbox One as well. Anyway, it's a story about Fabletown, specifically starring Bigby Wolf, and it is really, really good. It was something that was generally well received by critics. It got pretty good critical acclaims, got a bit of a cult following. There was going to be a sequel, Wolf Among Us, sort of season 2, I guess, and that got cancelled because Telltale Games went under. But then Telltale Games got picked up by another studio. They're back, they're up and running. So Wolf Among Us 2 is hopefully going to come out maybe even this year, although there isn't a release date available for that that's been officially announced. So with that context, that's kind of the background of the video game. Like I say, it's a bit of a point and click sort of game with a lot of stuff about dialogues and making choices and dialogue trees. And any action that there is in the form of quick time events, like, God of War or Uncharted. Um, but there we are. The images you can see here on the screen, this is what the game looks like. So the artwork is absolutely on point. It's kind of like a heavy, ultra Americanized, cel shaded sort of look. It works really, really well. The voice acting, excellent. The game as a whole, highly recommended. I think is brilliant. Really good story. Great prequel to all the Fable stories that we've read. You don't have to play this at all. You can read all the comics and ignore the game at all. And there's nothing in this which is a critical prequel kind of bit of information necessary to read the comics. But what I would say is you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice by not reading this. This is brilliant. Highly recommended. Really, really enjoyed it. So in terms of the storyline, I'm not going to give much away other than um, what can I say about it? It's essentially a murder mystery. It's the first murder that's happened in Fabletown in a very, very long time, and it's got Bigby, so the main character, the sheriff, investigating it. And it's set about 6 months before issue 1 of the Fable series. I think I'd say roughly set just before that. It's got all the characters that we know and love. So it's got people like Snow White, and it's got Bigby, and it's got just like a whole bunch of all the usual supporting characters, Buffkin and people like that. So yeah, it's very much a Fable story. It's really good, and the way that is done with the branching plots and the different choices that you make and all that sort of stuff makes it really enjoyable to play over and over because there's quite a few different plot threads that you can have and ways that the story can end. Like I say, it starts off with a murder of a Fable, and it then kind of just escalates and escalates and escalates and takes you all sorts of weird and wonderful different parts of Fabletown. So that takes us to the comic. So the comic isn't called The Wolf Among Us. It's actually called Fables: The Wolf Among Us. Mind a bit of semantics, but if you're looking for it online, it's important to know that. It was released in December 2014 by Vertigo, So yeah, part of the whole imprint as with the rest of Fables. And it's essentially a really close, limpid adaptation of the video game. It was adapted by Lila Sturgis, who previously had written some stuff for Fables. I won't go into it, but some various bits and pieces like Jack of Fables and stuff like that. And it's a really, really close adaptation. So it's been a couple of years since I played the video game. I do remember it pretty well, but reading the comic, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly how the video game unfolded. The only bits that are slightly different is when I may have taken different choices than the choices that the writer of the adaptation had taken. So, for example, there's certain events that happen where you're like, oh, do you chase person X or do you let them go and chase person Y? And I may have gone down one route, but the comic has, by definition, had to go down another. So it's not like a choose your own story adventure. It is a solid linear story. And in so doing, the story has made some specific choices as to how it unfolds, which is a little bit unlike the point and click adventure of the video game. One thing it does do is it does add some more background context to the characters that was there before, in the sense that I read trade paperback one of Fables of Wolf Among Us, and in that it adds quite a lot of background context to one or two of the main characters by doing a lot more flashbacks of their times, both in the homelands and also just after the homelands when they first came to the normal mundane world. I'm not going to give any spoilers as to what those stories are or who those characters are, but it's worth keeping that in mind. It kind of added a lot more stuff to the story. That said, what it added isn't something that I currently feel has added much to the characterization. So I'll just pause there just to give you an idea of what I mean by that. I've read the first trade paperback. Fables The Wolf Among Us, as in the comic adaptation, is actually two trade paperbacks. And in this video today, I'm just looking at the first trade paperback because that's what I've read a couple of days ago. So that trade paperback, Fables The Wolf Among Us, covers pretty much the first two or so episodes, I would say, of the game. So actually, sort of a smaller portion, so slightly less than half of the full 5 episode game, and it does end on like a nice twist and a cliffhanger, which I do remember from playing it. But that's what the first trade paperback is, and that's what I've just read. There are two trade paperbacks, and for next week's video, I'll cover the second trade paperback of The Wolf Among Us, which of course is our homework now for next week. But just to say, just to try and keep this short and just wrap it up, that's the video game. Highly recommended, beautiful to look at, great to play, amazing voice acting, great story. If you're into Fables, you'll be into this. If you're not into Fables and you're just into video games, you'll be into this. It's very similar in style to other games by Telltale, like The Walking Dead and things like that. So, hugely recommended. If you like the video game, you should definitely check out the adaptation. If you like Fables, you should definitely check out the adaptation. In some ways, I think the adaptation is as good as the game, although obviously it lacks that interactive element. But it is available as two trade paperbacks. Today we reviewed Trade Paperback Volume 1, Fables The Wolf Among Us, as I said, written by Lena Sturgis. And what I would say there is for next week, we're now going to look at Wolf Among Us Trade Paperback 2. Um, I'm not inclined to think this is something which is amazing and worth having as a hardcover, but join me next week and let's have a talk about Volume 2, the end of Fables The Wolf Among Us. See you next time. Stay classy. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.